Ladies and gentlemen, happy holidays! I hope you're getting to enjoy some time with your friends and family, and some other relatives you're probably not too close to and can care less about, but either way, my best goes out to you all. This Umbral Assassination build brings us an extremely fun playstyle, and a hell of an effective one at that. We're bringing together a very lightweight and mobile character, and combining what I found to be the most powerful Umbral magic and damage over time status effects like bleed, poison, and fire. So starting off, let's talk about how this class plays out and some of the interchangeable parts that you have the luxury of tweaking in this build. That being the weight from your armor choice, weapons, amulets, and rings. Now I chose to keep my weight as light as possible for this build, making sure we're not going into that medium encumbrance range. This leaves us very agile leaning into this heavy dodge playstyle that already in this game has extremely forgiving iframes. And with certain amulets and rings that we're going to be discussing later on in this build, this lightweight profile that we have is going to provide us with an increased DPS in exchange. Now don't get me wrong, feel free to add additional armor for more physical protection, but I certainly enjoyed the high risk, high reward feel that this playstyle offers. As for the weapons, the starter class that we went with was the Exile Stalker, so you can always keep that dagger feel if that's something you're into, but I'll be going over other options for very easy to get short swords, since that and status effects are what we're going to be focusing on here. The reasoning behind this is because the short swords give a full 360 moveset around your entire character, allowing all of your base attacks to serve as not just a solid and consistent AoE, but providing us a bit more protection as well, making it so we don't always have to be on the lookout for everything all around us. So the 360 moveset and the addition of gaining a bit more length with the swords is certainly going to be the way to go in my book. Moving into our main weapons, we're going to be going with Bloodlust in our main hand, due to it having the most status effect potential on our enemies with a 60 in bleed and a 60 in fire. Also, when it's maxed out, it has a 338 attack power rating, while only requiring 13 in agility and 13 in inferno to use. And not to mention it's scaling with an A- in agility and A- with inferno to make this one hell of a synergistic sword with this build. In our offhand, we're going to be going with the Hallowed Praise. While I haven't maxed this one out fully as of yet, it's still providing us with an attack power rating of 263, with the requirements to use sitting at a low 12 agility. You also can't beat the additional 80 blood loss on top of what our main hand is providing, and this is also giving us a solid A- agility scaling, which is nothing to scoff at either. Now, since we have such a variety of status effects at our disposal with these weapons, of course it's your choice to either add the Umbral weapon enchant or the poison weapon spell, just to add that additional status effect. Me personally, I choose to go with the poison weapon more often than not, as I found it to be a bit stronger overall, but to each its own. Have fun with it and pick what fits your thematic playstyle. Now here's a quick tip: if you're looking for another easy to get early game option, check out this short I uploaded, so you can now receive the Kukujin short sword, which is going to be your best bet when it comes to status effect swords, especially when you're just starting off. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, feel free to hit that like button, it would mean a lot. It lets me know that you're enjoying this video and potentially going to be giving this build a try yourself. We're also going to have a lot more of this coming your way in the future, so hit that subscribe button if you feel like it. Thank you so much. Our catalyst of choice is going to be the Lost Baraskew. If that's how you say it, you gotta bear with me. I chose this specifically for its 5 spell slots to try things out, and with this upgraded to +6, it gives a spell power rating of 163. Now I highly recommend going with something with around 4 spell slots in exchange for a bit more damage, as the spells we use are going to be covering all the damage types we need, and we'll go over what spell I would discard if I chose to go with something with less spell slots. But overall, it did the job for me, and it'll certainly work for you just the same. Moving into our armor set, this goes back to keeping yourself as light as possible if you choose to do so. I ended up using the Abiding Defender mask or the Radiant Purifier hat, as both of these options look absolutely badass. And if you've been watching me for a while, you already know that's what matters the most to me. And real quick, leave a comment on what you think the best looking armor set is so I can go ahead and take a peek. Now when it comes to the chest piece, we get most of our physical resistance from this, so keep an eye out for the highest you could find while keeping yourself in that lightweight category. I chose the Light Reaper's armor that has only 24 in weight, but a 149 physical damage mitigation. And the fire resistance is a whopping 219, so very solid on that as well. For the wrists and legs, once again, go with the highest physical mitigation you can find while staying below that medium encumbrance. I ended up using the Desecrated Guy wrappings and the Pure Blade trousers for majority of the playthrough, which altogether gave a great look and I was quite happy with. On a more important note, let's talk rings and your amulet. The amulet I highly recommend will be the Prince Predecessor Sting. This is going to deal additional damage depending on how low you keep your equipment load at. If you're not going that route, another fun one I would recommend is the Suja Harmony Hoop, which is going to increase your spell damage per cast, and this is going to amplify even further if you use different magical schools. The second part isn't as important to us, as we're primarily using Umbral magic only, but being able to spam spells while increasing the damage each cast is a very nice way to thin out certain pesky enemies you're going to find along the landscape. Moving into the rings, most importantly is going to be the Ring of Bones. This is increasing our maximum equip load, which in turn is going to increase our DPS output, as we stated before, due to the amulet. Now in the beginning, you can never go wrong with the Ring of Duty, increasing health and endurance, very important stats to us throughout the entirety of the game. But once you get a bit further, these options open up, and the first one on my list for you to keep an eye on is the Bloodbane Ring. This is going to allow us to inflict poison buildup while at the same time inflict bleed buildup, really solidifying that status effect build we're going with here. And last up would be the straight physical damage increase with Meliker's Ring. Now let's move into the spells that I found most effective for our setup here. Number one is going to be your standard spell, the Umbral Orb. This is your base spell that costs little to no mana, sitting at 13 to use, and it's going to be your staple go-to throughout the game. The second spell, and most unique in my opinion that can't be overlooked, is the Umbral Guardian. Now this definitely isn't going to blow your socks off with its DPS, but it's a great way to set up a heavy encounter that you know is coming up, and it's going to provide you with consistent additional damage to anything surrounding you. Up next, we're going with Latimer's Javelin, which to be honest was my favorite spell to use other than the weapon enchants. It has a quick spell cast so you can let this thing go super quick, and it does a boatload of not only single target damage, but brings a splash effect that's going to hit all surrounding enemies. We also have Umbral Agony, which is just a big explosive projectile that serves as another solid AoE option. Now this is the optional spell I mentioned at the top. Since we have the Javelin and it provides AoE, even though it's a bit less effective, it's worth dropping this for a bit of a bump in our spell power. And last up, we have either the Umbral or Poison Weapon to give our weapons that extra pack a punch we're looking for. So let's go over our finalized stats that really rounded out this build. As we ended the game at level 112, our strength is sitting at 9, we have 40 in agility, 20 in endurance, 46 in vitality, 25 in radiance, and 25 in inferno. The reasoning behind this is strength we don't need. 40 in agility is our main stat to focus on through the entirety of our playthrough. Also, our weapons are going to be scaling heavily with that and inferno. Obviously, health is always super important in Souls-likes, so keep improving that until you feel comfortable, especially in the beginning of this game. I know you probably already know that, but it just has to be said. Now, endurance you can reduce if you're not going for that lightweight playstyle as we did here, but if you are, I highly recommend you keep that where it is. And as for Radiance and Inferno, my advice on these two is to increase them together slow and steady. I would say once you run into a spell that requires something specific, like 10 in each, you now can reach for that goal. But most of the time when I found myself able to spend 2 points at a time, that's what I went to spend it on. Always keep an eye out for any new Umbral spells unlocking along the way that has new spell requirements, but once you get around 20 in each, you're pretty much going to have everything available to you. On that note, I appreciate you all for hanging out. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will talk to you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.